Good evening, everyone. Welcome along to the opening round of the Junior Saloon Car Championship official eSeries, the first foray into sim racing for this exciting junior series based out of the United Kingdom. We've got a whole host of young hopefuls looking to try and compete for the top prize over the next 7 weeks of competition. Andy McEwen here to talk you through all of the action. We've got a big team of people who have been working behind the scenes for many a week now to put this together. We are all extremely excited to be here, ready and raring to go at the home of British motorsport, Silverstone, for the opening races of the season. We've got two 20-minute races coming your way tonight on the 23rd of February, before in a week's time we head to Donington Park, then Brands Hatch, Croft, Alton Park, Snetterton and Thruxton over the next 7 weeks, with one round every week here on a Thursday evening. So we've got your Thursday evening sim racing entertainment sorted, and I'm sure that by visiting all of the very greatest racetracks in the United Kingdom, we'll be able to put on quite a show for you. Some tracks that are really well suited, I think, to these little junior saloon car Citroen Saxos, and I'm sure we're going to see some good wheel-to-wheel action over the course of this 7-week championship. It is all in aid of some pretty interesting prizes as well, which is always good to see. We've got cash prizes up for grabs for the top 3 drivers in the championship, with the champion getting the option of trading in that £300 for an Optics 31.5-inch curved gaming monitor, second in the championship receiving £200, and third place with a £100 bonus. There's also the driver of the round, courtesy of our sponsors Freem, and they will be donating a free pair of sim racing gloves to the driver of the round, and that is where you at home can get involved yourselves, because we will be throwing that out to you. We'll also be having a discussion here behind the scenes as to who we think is worthy of the driver of the round. But if you've got any opinions watching at home, then do drop that into the YouTube chat, and we will be sure to take that into account. So lots on the line over the course of the next handful of weeks. As I said, it all gets started here tonight with two 20-minute races around the Silverstone International Circuit. The drivers have had couple of opportunities before tonight to get to grips with the car and the track. There have been a couple of test evenings for drivers to jump online and have a go behind the wheel and see what they make of the Citroen Saxos that have been painstakingly recreated to be essentially as accurate to the real life car as possible. For those of you who perhaps aren't aware, the Junior Saloon Car Championship, a very popular championship here in the UK that really has been growing from strength to strength over the last number of years, with grid sizes continuing to increase well into the 20s now, getting on for 30 cars, I believe, were registered for the championship last year. Being a junior championship, it caters for those between the ages of 14 and 17. It is, for many, their very first foray into circuit racing, some of them having come out of a career in karting, but many of them making their first competitive racing within the Junior Saloon Car Championship. And now through this official eSeries, we get a chance to see some of them, perhaps even before they've set foot in the real cars, and get an idea of who may have what it takes to go and race on the circuits for real. We're about halfway through the qualifying session, then a 15-minute qualifying session. This sets the grid for our opening race of the night. That will, as I said, be 20 minutes in duration, and then we reverse the results from race 1 to give us the grid for race 2. So in other words, a full reversed grid. Those who finish at the front in race 1 will have it all to do digging their way through from the back of the grid in race 2, and vice versa. Those who struggle perhaps in race 1, well, their evening is not all over. They have another opportunity to try and go again in race number 2. As you can see, we've got a healthy grid of cars lined up for this opening night of racing, and it's CJ Morgan at the moment who is fastest, the driver of the number 59 car, CJ Morgan. The youngster, the 16-year-old from Hastings. I say youngster, that's a bit of a racing veteran in junior saloon car racing terms, but there is CJ coming out onto the Hangar Straight, and as you can see, it's a busy racetrack. This is not the longest of circuits, but it's certainly a very high-speed circuit, and these little Saxos are limited in their aerodynamic efficiency, shall we say, and that means that things like slipstreaming become extra important around here, and within qualifying in particular, that can be worth a big chunk of time. So CJ perhaps has been using that to set his fastest time of the session, which was a 125.365, only half a tenth quicker though than Levine Kishore, and Levine at the wheel of car number 95. The 14-year-old is second fastest, but very tight times indeed at the front of the qualifying session. There is Levine coming through Abbey and Village, and that last lap a couple of tenths off his previous best within the session. Still plenty of time to go out there and try again. Then it's Josh Salvadori, who is third fastest, and he has managed to get within, again, a couple of tenths or so of Levine, with Jamie Petters fourth, and the top five at the moment rounded out by Riley Bishop. Had, I believe, all 16 drivers here tonight setting lap times within the qualifying session. One or two of them perhaps not getting fully up to speed just yet, but plenty of time to go, like I said, and a couple of them going no further. Zach Palmer there parked at the side of the road. The only one either, in fact, Jamie Petters, who is fourth within the session, also parked at the side of the road on the Hanger Straight. Now, there are only a couple of reasons as to why they may be there. Unsure as to whether this series has a rule about fast tracking back to the pit lane. Assetto Corsa, which is the simulator we're using for this championship, does have the option, if you press a certain key, to fast track you back to the pit lane, so you don't have to drive back on an in-lap, so to speak. But I know some championships do have rules against doing that, and I am now just being informed that that is the case here for Junior Saloon Car Championship. So that means the reason that those two drivers are likely parked at the side of the track is that they have run out of fuel, and that's a very easy thing to do. Of course, in qualifying, you want the car to be as light as possible, especially these cars, because they are limited on power, limited on top speed, in much the same way that the real car would be, and so you want to try and put as little fuel in as possible, but you've got to judge that correctly. On board then with Harley Connolly, let's take a ride around the Silverstone International Circuit. He's just jumped up into 6th place, actually, so Harley getting quicker and quicker as the session goes on. He's just made his way through the flat-out right-hander at Abbey, then the equally flat-out left-hander at Farm, before the first big braking zone here into Village. You can carry a surprising amount of speed through there, but these front-wheel drive cars are prone to a bit of understeer. That's what we just saw from Harley, drifting wide. That puts him offline now through this tricky little downhill section known as the Link, because it links the one side of the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit to the other. This then is where it rejoins that GP circuit down the world-famous Hanger Straight underneath the circuit bridge that takes you onto the Grand Prix circuit paddock area. The next decision for the drivers is to spot their braking point into Stowe Corner, probably the best overtaking opportunity on the track. You can see it's so wide, but you've got to be really careful turning in. These cars are prone to locking the rear brakes. I think that's definitely something a few drivers have been struggling with. Harley Connolly, in fact, is going to spoil our fun by bailing for the pit lane, but he's doing so because he will have just about enough time to top the car up with fuel, perhaps change tyres, and get back out there for one last-ditch qualifying attempt. Alexander Mostaf here then in the 888 car, making his way through, and Alexander, another 16-year-old from Bracknell, making his way up towards Abbey Corner, and he sits 8th at the moment in the qualifying session, just inside the top 10. His fastest lap time of the session, a 126.323, his previous one a couple of tenths off that. He's just under a second away from the fastest time within the session so far, set still by CJ Morgan. So CJ Morgan going nowhere at the top of the times. That 25.365 has not been bettered by CJ or anybody else, but that's fine. He's doing enough right now to claim the first pole position of the season. For reference, you get 25 points for a race win. Points wherever you finish. Of course, the further up the order you are, the more points you will score. There is also a bonus point for a fastest race lap, and the bonus point for the fastest lap within this qualifying session. So within the next couple of minutes, we will have a championship leader. Very early days, of course, but the bonus points can all add up over the course of a 14-race championship. It's not unheard of for these titles to be won and lost on a handful of points. Often look back at those bonus points as where one driver found an edge over the other. Ethan Jensen here working his way down through the Vale into the club complex, being careful to avoid those big sausage curbs on the apexes of these corners. That will quite quickly tip one of these little Saxos at least up onto two wheels, perhaps over altogether, which is not what we want to see. That's another complex of corners where we'll see some good side-by-side racing. Silverstone International, really the perfect place to start off this championship, I think. It's relatively straightforward track, certainly when you compare it to some tracks like Croft or Alton Park that are coming up a bit later on in the calendar. Started things off relatively easy here, which is important actually, because again, this being a junior championship, we are dealing with relatively inexperienced drivers, and many of them making their very first forays into sim racing themselves, and that is really exciting for us to watch along and see how they improve, see how they get on. It's one of my favourite things about any junior competition. You're often looking at drivers who have not been doing this for very long, perhaps have never done it at all before, And you will always find there are some drivers who maybe at the start of the season are not exactly on the ultimate pace, but naturally the more seat time they get, the more laps they complete, the faster they get, the closer to the outright pace they get. And it's always fascinating to see which of those drivers are going to come on strong in the second half of the season. Perhaps too late to mount a real championship challenge, but certainly they could get themselves some race wins as you get deeper into the championship. Pushing along here as the 280 car comes through. That's Gabriel Doyle Parfait, and that was good enough for 15th. I think that was a slight improvement that time. Yes, that was his personal best lap of the session. 2 green sectors as well, meaning that he went faster through both halves of the lap than he had been previously. This lap, because it's not particularly long, split into 2 rather than 3 sectors. A big moment there for Gabriel as he went through Village. And I don't think he had yet seen the checkered flag, but the checkered flag is now out. The session is over. If you've already crossed the timing line, though, before that time ticked down to 0, then you are eligible to complete your lap. And Levine Kishore there almost mounting a challenge for pole position. Look at that. The first sector was purple, meaning quicker than anybody, but it all went away a little bit in the second half of the lap for Levine. So 125.6 was not, in the end, good enough for an improved time. So Kishore stays in second position. Bonus point looking likely to go to CJ Morgan here, but he and Levine Kishore clearly very evenly matched. Only something like 3/100ths separating them come the end of the qualifying session. Josh Salvadori stays third fastest come the end. Louis Stannard, the next car by the looks of it to come through, and Lewis Stannard, excuse me, he is running 13th right now. Current personal best within this session, has just been beaten because he went green in both sectors and jumps into the top 10. So Lewis Stannard, 9th fastest with a 126.405. And even within that qualifying session, you start to see a version of what I was telling you about, where drivers do get quicker the more laps that they complete. Well, that will become even more evident as we go deeper into the season. But it is CJ Morgan who has got himself the pole position, the first pole position of the season, and therefore CJ is our early championship leader. 1 championship point goes the way of the number 59 car. CJ will be very, very pleased with that indeed, I'm sure. Always a nice boost to start your season off with a pole position. Puts him in the perfect position now to go on and challenge for a race win. And CJ has won multiple karting championships, he tells us, and a few podiums as well in the Junior Saloon Car Championship at Donington Park and Brands Hatch last year, so he is one of our real-world racers. So perhaps unsurprising then that he has managed to acquaint himself with the virtual Citroën Saxo quite so well. So CJ then jumping to pole position, and we're going to try to have a chat with him because it was a very exciting qualifying session. He managed to snatch the pole by the narrowest of narrow margins, and that bodes well for the race as well, because Silverstone International is definitely one of those circuits where it's not going to be easy to break away at the front. But we are about to be able to chat to the person who is challenged with that, trying to pull away from the front, because CJ Morgan joins us now in the commentary box. CJ, congratulations on that pole position. By less than 3/100ths of a second, you'll be lining up at the front of the grid. You've got to be happy with that.
Yes, Andy, I am. I'm certainly happy. I just put together a perfect lap, really. I couldn't really improve towards the end, so I was hoping that Levine couldn't. I saw he gained about 200ths on me midway through the session, but he just couldn't quite grab it, so I'm really pleased with that, and now see what I can do in the race.
Absolutely, a really tight qualifying session. I'm certainly hoping that that translates into a nice close race. I'm sure you would prefer to just disappear up the road, but I don't think there's much chance of that happening, is there? This is a competitive grid.
Yeah, I would 100% prefer to just drive off into the distance, but it's always fun to have a good race as well, so we'll see how it goes.
These cars look pretty challenging. I've had a quick go in them, but I wager that I'm significantly off the pace compared to the likes of you. They are tricky on cold tyres, though, aren't they? So how much do you have to be patient here in the early stages just to make sure you don't throw it all away on lap 1?
It normally takes about a lap and a half to warm up the tyres. You've just got to be very cautious, especially because they're very rear-end happy cars. So you've got to make sure, obviously, not to drop it, not to like oversteer, not to understeer, because that could lose you many positions, especially in the first lap. So take it slow and steady and then build up to the pace.
Sounds like a plan. CJ, we'll let you go and continue your pre-race preparations, but thanks for coming and chatting to us, and congratulations on that first pole position of the season.
Thank you, Andy.
CJ Morgan then, our early championship leader, but we heard from him that he has quite a few challenges ahead of him still if he's going to take the 25 points for a race victory, because as he said, these cars are not the easiest to drive in the early stages. They are very, very tail happy, particularly under braking, and that could prove to be a challenge. So, CJ Morgan then, the white car number 59, will start from the pole position. Alongside him, the the black and pink car of Levine Kishore. Those two separated by 28 thousandths of a second in qualifying. Then it's Josh Salvadori, the red and black car, starting third on the grid, with Jamie Petters, the all-red, on the inside of row number 2, pole position on the outside here at Silverstone, because that's in theory the grippier line. Then the turquoise car of Riley Bishop is 5th. There you can see him. He will be lining up on that outside line for Abbey Corner. And then the yellow and black is Harley Connolly, just outside of the top half dozen, or just inside the top half dozen, I should say. Alexander Mostaff is 7th place on the grid, and he will have Cameron Pratt-Thompson for company on that 4th row as we now work towards the back end of the top 10. Nathan Jensen there in his car lining up 9th, and then blue, white and red is Lewis Stannard, who we saw making some improvements there towards the end of the session, just about squeaking into the top 10. Jonathan Moore and Jensen Bell, they'll be both looking to try and do exactly that and move inside the top 10 once the race gets underway. They share the 6th row of the grid ahead of James Sherrington and Zach Palmer together on row number 7. Then right towards the back of the field we can see Gabriel Dahl-Parfait, who did end up 15th unfortunately at the end of that qualifying session, but will be looking to try and improve forward from there over the course of a 20-minute race. So they'll get a decent number of laps in around this place, as we've seen, not the longest of laps in the world, the Silverstone International Circuit, and so plenty of opportunities to make your moves forward. For those at the front, a little bit of patience, perhaps the order of the day. For those behind, though, they are going to be keen to get to the front, because I suspect, and we'll learn together as the race starts, I suppose, but I suspect that that slipstream is going to be quite powerful around here. And so you'll want to be in the lead group if possible. You don't really want to lose touch with the race leaders if you can help it. So here we go then, almost ready to go racing for the first time in the Junior Saloon Car Championship official eSeries round number 1 here from the Silverstone International Circuit. Andy McEwen here to talk you through all of the action. We've got CJ Morgan on the pole position, and we have got Levine Kishore alongside, and that is your front row, ready to do battle for 20 minutes here. The Silverstone International Circuit based outside of the Silverstone wing. The red lights then are about to come on, and a new season of racing here is about to get underway. Who will grab the first race victory of the season? Well, we're 20 minutes away from finding out. Revs starting to rise, the red lights go out now. We are away and racing, and it's a brilliant start from pole position there, and that will be for sure CJ Morgan, who grabs the advantage heading towards the first corner. 3 wide for third position though, because we will have Levine Kishore breaking through into second, or maintaining second on the run towards the first corner, but immediately moving up to challenge around the outside line. Bishop is there as well, and they were almost 3 wide for the race lead. Heading out of Abbey, there's a little bit of contact, and CJ Morgan doing his best to try and defend from not 1 but 2 cars into the braking zone at Village for the first time. This is where you really have to be careful on those rear tyres. Under braking, so easy to lose the rear as you turn into Village. They've all managed to get through there reasonably clean. A couple of cars running wide, but no major contact, which is nice to see, and they make their way down through the link for the first time with CJ Morgan leading the way. It's Bishop there, Riley Bishop in second position by the looks of it. Levine Kishore is third, and then fourth position Josh Salvadori. So the big gainer there really was Riley Bishop, up a couple of positions into third within the first couple of corners, into second in fact within the first couple of corners. Down the hanger straight they head for the first time. Here comes the challenge towards the sharp end. Levine Kishore actually struggling to hang on to third for the time being, with Salvador looking to the outside, and Kishore is sideways out of Stowe Corner. That will lose him a lot of momentum down the hill. We have got one car pointing the wrong way in the background as well, and that is... Who's that we've lost? That was Pratt Thompson, wasn't it? Who was tangled up, I think, maybe with Zach Palmer as they went down the hill. And more drama down at Vale there, and into the club sequence. And we are going to lose a couple of them to the pit lane. I think we've got Mostov into the pit lane. Palmer also making his way down into pit road with some damage, but a lot of action, as we suspected, in the early stages of this race. The opening lap then led by Riley Bishop, so somewhere Riley managed to find a way past CJ Morgan there, and Levine Kishore keeping a watching brief in third, James Sherrington up into fourth position. So I suspect that, in fact, that's changing around as I say that, because we've got Lewis Stannard now moving his way around the outside, look, turning into Village. Sherrington then dropping down a position, and he elbows somebody out wide. That was Connolly, I think, perhaps running wide. And as Sherrington rejoins, he is spun off the road, and James Sherrington just tried to rejoin into a three-wide pack of cars. There simply wasn't the space, and well, after a pretty calm opening lap, it is anything but now. Another car getting spun off the road. That was Jonathan Moore, and he had been running just outside the top half dozen, I think, but finds himself pointing the wrong way. And by the time he selects first gear and gets going again, he is pretty much at the back of the pack. So drivers were willing to show a bit of patience for a lap, but that patience pretty quickly wearing out, apart from perhaps amongst the top three, who have managed to make a bit of a break now. Bishop, Morgan and Levine Kishore. Another car there, did we heading towards pit lane? I think we did. That was Lewis Stannard, and Connolly heading in as well. Just Connolly, I think. Stannard is still there. He was just taking an odd line. There's more carnage heading through the Vale and Club sequence of corners. This has got disaster written all over it, hasn't it? Three wide through Club Corner. There's ample space for that, but everybody wants the inside line. That is where the contact can happen. Big shout out, by the way, to Gabriel Doyle Parfait there, the green car that is into sixth position. Remember, he started right at the back of the grid. He was the slowest car in qualifying, but this goes to show that qualifying is only half the story. And once you go racing, you've got ample opportunities to move forward. And Gabriel Doyle Parfait has been doing exactly that. Was briefly back behind Charlie Constable into sixth place, but he'll still be very happy with how his race has begun. Or Harry Connolly there coming back out of the pit lane after his incident down at this part of the circuit on the previous lap. Leading trio continuing to make a bit of a break at the front of the pack. This really is where all of the action is in the second group of cars that's making its way out onto the Hangar Straight now. Or two of them running a bit wide over the exit curbs there, down onto that all-important backstretch, which is where I anticipated we'd see most of the overtaking, but actually we've seen some good side-by-side racing all around the Silverstone International Circuit over the first few minutes, including for the race lead, where CJ Morgan has had enough of staring at the rear bumper of Riley Bishop's car, and wants to find a way through. Oh, that's Gabriel Doyle Parfait off the road, and that is a big, big shame, because he, as we just said, had been driving tremendously well to get through the order, and unfortunately now finds himself pretty much back where he started. Stannard again is showing as being in the pit lane as he comes down through Vale and Club, and this time I think he actually is in the pit lane, so Lewis Stannard clearly has sustained a bit of damage as well, and that all really stems from this very vigorous battle that's been going on fourth place on back, really. Leading three has now become a leading two, because CJ Morgan and Riley Bishop, despite their fighting, have actually gapped Levine Kishore now slightly, who still sits in third place. There is Levine in the distinctively liveried car running third. Ollie Constable is fourth, Nathan Jensen fifth, Josh Salvador in sixth position. That's what's going on here, and there's a big crunch going through Village Corner, and Nathan Jensen is out wide and rejoins. Amazingly, I think they all kept it going the right direction vaguely. There will certainly be some damage sustained to a couple of those cars. The cars don't always show the damage visually, but there is certainly the chance for some internal damage to have been done, especially if they keep chopping across in front of people down the back straight. Jamie Petters has just had contact with Nathan Jensen as well. We're on board with Jamie Petters now, who started the race reasonably well, I seem to remember. Top couple of rows. Has dropped himself down into ninth position now as they head towards Stowe once again. There goes the lead group, who have now been caught because the safety car is being thrown, and one or two of them perhaps not realising that, and this was always the danger as they came out of Stowe Corner, and the leaders had slowed down, the others had not, and they're now going to have to work pretty hard to get themselves back into some semblance of the correct order. And Lewis Stannard has taken over the race lead, but will not be allowed to keep it. Sherrington going with him. also won't be allowed to stay there because by my reckoning it should still be Riley Bishop with the race lead. But, these two don't appear to have got the message about the safety car, which, if our information is correct, is being scrambled now. And certainly the race leaders, the erstwhile race leaders, had managed to get that message loud and clear. They have backed off. This should be the lead group of cars, but as I said, one or two of those running further down the order saw their chance to get to the front and have not noticed what's going on with the safety car. Now a couple of them starting to get the message. That was Jensen making his way through farm, offline, going slowly, trying to make sure that he lets the leaders back through and tries to slot back in where he should be, but that means we're still waiting for James Sherrington and Stannard to get the message, which they perhaps have done, because Lewis Stannard just had a very slow first sector. In fact, yes, you can see Lewis off in the distance slowing down. James Sherrington is blissfully unaware as to what's going on, and he has very much taken this opportunity to pull a big lead, but I'm certain that a penalty will be incoming if he doesn't back off and pull back in line. In fairness, Lewis Stannard isn't backing off that much either, is he? He's not actually allowing the others to overtake right now. First sector that was a bit slow could have been slow for other reasons, perhaps. In theory, once this all cycles through and we end up with CJ Morgan, Riley Bishop and Levine Kishore as our top three, we should have a pretty interesting race, because Levine had been dropped by those top two. Now finds himself back in contention. Josh Salvadore is in the pit lane now too. There's another who I noticed didn't have the chance to mention earlier on, had lost some ground at the start. So he will once again lose even further ground as a result of an unscheduled pit stop. We're getting somewhere now. Lewis Stannard has realised what's going on, and so too has the driver who had disappeared off into the lead, James Sherrington, and he will also now drop back into line, hopefully where he should be. So good work there done by race control, and they've managed to get the drivers organised as to where they need to be. And one or two of them perhaps suffering from a slight communication barrier, but they have now managed to get that message across. And Scott Thorne working busily behind the scenes. Scott is our race director and safety car driver. I think the reason that we are having a virtual safety car period now is likely because he's been busy race directing and trying to the drivers organised as to where they need to be. So, looks as though with all of that sorted, we're ready for a race restart. We're going to have just about exactly half the race still to go, so plenty of time still for this to all shake out. CJ Morgan weaving his tyres, weaving his car around vigorously from side to side, trying to get heat into the tyres. Rear tyres especially, these being front-wheel drive Citroen Saxos. The front wheels are doing everything. They're handling the steering, the acceleration, the bulk of the braking. And it's those rear tyres that are just sort of along for the ride, really. And they are the tyres you need to work on when you get these opportunities behind the safety car to try and get the temperature up into them. Looks like we're getting ready to go racing again, though. Safety car lights are off. One car running a little bit wide in the background. That's going to immediately split the pack slightly, but CJ Morgan has executed a pretty perfect restart there, I would say. Riley Bishop is left to defend his second place from Levine Kishore. Now, in theory, there shouldn't be any overtaking going on here until they get to the timing line, but one or two of them are having had moments through Vale and Club, are significantly off the pace, so it doesn't really leave the other drivers much option but to pull up alongside them. Anyway, they've managed to sort it out by the time they get to the timing line, and those top five making a bit of a break as a result. That's Morgan, Bishop, Kishore, Constable and Jensen. This then the fight for sixth, and they've started biffing and barging into each other again. That was Jamie Petters getting very sideways in the all-red number 99 car. Whether that was because he ran into someone or someone ran into him, I'm not entirely sure. Finds himself offline now as they drop down through the link. James Sherrington's had some contact, we believe, as well. With Stannard and Harley Connolly getting together. They're all making friends out there, aren't they? First day at school, and no one is holding back, that's for sure. With an elbow going on there for Petters and Sherrington down the back straight. You're riding on board with Zach Palmer. had a grandstand view of that, picks up one position as a result, turns into Stowe Corner. You can see the car fishtailing around, but then picking up absolutely boatloads of understeer. One or two cars exiting stage left as a result of those cold rear tyres, perhaps. Rejoining in not the same order as they were in. Contact there from Zach Palmer. One car moves across in front of him, and Palmer does well to avoid that car as it came back around. Others have not been quite so lucky. James Sherrington getting involved again, and that was Petters, I think, who was off the road at Village and then suddenly found himself arriving at Vale in completely the wrong direction. And again, I suspect one or two of them may have sustained a few bits of damage from that. Cars moving over on each other as they came towards the braking zone. Got to have really good spatial awareness in sim racing. That's not always easy to do because, of course, a real car, you look to your left, you can see out of the window. You look to your right, you can see out of the window. You look up, there's a rear view mirror. Sim racing, not always that simple, but you also have other tools at your disposal. For example, you can be running a car radar system, which allows you digitally to see what's going on around you. Gabriel Doyle-Parfait will have seen, therefore, if he's running that, Jamie Petters was driving into the side of him as they came through Village. No harm, no foul. They both keep going again. And Gabriel Doyle-Parfait, having had a real yo-yo race, now finds himself packed down in 14th place once again. Situation normal at the front of the field, really. Whilst everyone else is having a bit of a banger race, these three are putting on a really good show at the front of the field. CJ Morgan, Riley Bishop and Levine Kishore, who is staying with them this time, have very much made a breakaway at the front. Levine purple in Sector 1, so faster than anybody else has been through the first half of the lap, and that safety car, as I suspected might be the case, has really given Levine a second wind. Perhaps an opportunity to move further up the podium with 7 minutes still to go. At the back, this is the fight for 8th position. Lewis Stannard and Jonathan Moore together. Jonathan's been off the road a couple of times in this race, but finds himself back inside the top 10. It's been a bit of a race of attrition, hasn't it? So for those who find themselves in strife, it's well worth carrying on because you still have an opportunity perhaps to improve your position. Car still in the pit lane and perhaps out of the race now is Cameron Pratt-Thompson. He's been in the pit lane for a little while, I think, actually, so his race seems to be done. This, though, the fight for second place, and Levine Kishore very much going for this now, side by side with Riley Bishop as they make their way through the link, down into Chapel Corner. The inside line is not really the place to be because that sacrifices all of your momentum onto the hanger straight. That's what happened there to Levine on the inside, and it did not quite work. While Jonathan Moore has briefly got the inside and ahead of Lewis Stannard, but again, finds that the inside at Chapel is not the best place to be for a good exit, so runs out wide and Stannard goes back through. Or jockeying for position further back, that's Salvadori, who is moving to cover from Jamie Petters as they head towards us. The white car on the outside, I think, is Mostov, isn't it? Who is dropping down into 14th place then, as those two both find a way past down the hanger straight towards the right-hander at Stowe Corner. Very wide there for Salvatore, and that will mean he has to be careful on that rejoin. That's one thing I am noticing, drivers perhaps having made mistakes, just sort of elbowing their way back onto the track. You've got to make sure you're doing so safely. That little bit of contact cost Jamie Petters a position. And through goes Mostov, but then Mostov running wide through the second part of Club, and so Jamie Petters sees his opportunity to get back up the inside again. They'll run door to door across the timing line, past the pits. Next corner, of course, the near flat-out right-hander at Abbey. Drivers perhaps will have a dab on the brakes to get the front end settled into the corner. Certainly if you're side-by-side, that might be necessary, but they're continuing to run side-by-side now through Farm. Something will have to give now as they hit the brakes into Village Corner, and it's Jamie Petters who slides through. Gabriel Doyle-Parfait arrives on the scene, doing significantly more speed into the corner than those two were. And really looking now to try and find a way past Mostov as well. Looks at the inside and, good driving actually there from Alexander, because he saw Gabriel coming at the very last second. And opened up the steering, but then gets, unfortunately, not really rewarded for his troubles because he's in the barriers coming out onto the hanger straight. And Alexander Mostov is going to fall certainly to the back of the pack. And again, if he has damage, that may require a trip to the pit lane. And back to the front of the field where, well, not quite the front really, because CJ Morgan has checked out now as these two start to battle over second. CJ has opened up a very sizable cushion at the head of the field. Battle for second getting hotter and hotter by the lap. 4 minutes to go. Probably 3 more laps around the Silverstone International Circuit, and Levine Kishore has got the run up the inside towards Abbey Corner. Side by side for second place then. Levine Kishore on the inside, but it's hard to keep that momentum going on the inside line. Riley Bishop knows that, finds some grip on the outside, keeps that speed rolling through Farm, but the next corner, the first of the real big breaking points at Village, is to the right, and that will favour Levine, who slips through into second position. So, real race of two halves this for the number 95 car. Kishore was not all that strong in the early stages, dropping away from the leading two, but now is right back with them. Harley Connolly, meanwhile, has had an incident, I think, on his own going through Farm, bouncing off the barriers, and now bouncing off another car, and that was Jonathan Moore, I think, who got roughed up slightly through the link. Opens the door up for Zach Palmer too, and they run 3 wide off the corner. 1 or 2 of them go grass tracking, and how's that one all sorted itself out with Harley out in front? Yes, it has. So Harley Connolly goes from the front to the back to the front of that group in the space of 3 corners. Palmer is going to try and use the slipstream now towards Stowe Corner to get back up the inside. Second place continuing to be side by side as Levine Kishore and Riley Bishop run absolutely door handle to door handle through Club. This has been near enough an entire lap of side-by-side racing. A little bit of a hip check there, going through the 2 parts of Club Corner, but that's all fair. They're doing a really good job to leave each other space. Look how tight Levine was running out of Club there, not using all of the road, because he knew that Riley Bishop was still situated to his left-hand side. Wanted to make absolutely sure that he left him racing room. This is a great example to the others of how this should be done. Wheel to wheel, minimal contact, certainly nothing too forceful. Therefore, they both live to tell the tale. They're still side by side, turning into Village. This is cracking stuff, and neither of them running off the track either. This is just really good, respectful racing. You have to wonder whose patience will run out first here. 2 minutes to go, so a lap and a half more than likely left. They are still side by side as they come out onto the hanger straight. Out wide onto the grass goes Riley Bishop. That will pick him up a little bit of wheel spin. I was about to say that he might have got the move made, but that cost him speed onto the back straight, and so back up the inside comes Levine Kishore. Neck and neck they will run. Of course, Charlie Constable in 4th is loving seeing this because he's getting closer by the corner as they continue to run door to door. Has he got enough time to get up to them? We'll have to wait and see. Shaw slides through, but slides wide. Not too wide, though, so Levine finally, after nearly 2 laps of side-by-side action, breaks through into second position. Riley Bishop will not like that, though. 32 car certainly will be looking to try and get back up the inside, but Levine Kishore defending well there, just parked the car on the apex coming through the first part of Club, made sure that the switchback manoeuvre was not an option for Riley. That's really good racecraft there from Levine. Knew exactly where to position the car in order to prevent that run from coming. The last defensive move that he will have to make. We may be on the final lap, but there are plenty more opportunities for Riley to try and get this done. Again, Levine just moving a bit further to the right-hand side of the road into Village. Breaks noticeably later than Riley Bishop. Still makes the corner. Riley is slightly faster off the turn, but nowhere to go with that, really, as they drop down through the link. It's, in a way, the most crucial part of the track. You've got to get out of this corner well, and Riley dipped a wheel onto the grass turning in, and that little bit of oversteer that he picked up as a result meant that he lost a car length or so to Levine Kishore into the hanger straight, and I suspect that might be all she wrote in the fight for second. Peters, though, not done battling, trying to find a way back into the top 10 here. Harrington, the driver ahead. This is a battle that will run right until the checkered flag, I suspect. Go side by side underneath the bridge towards the braking zone at Stowe Corner. Jamie Peters on the inside line, you would think that would have what it takes to make that move stick. At the front of the pack, though, CJ Morgan, while he saw off the early challenges, and ever since then has never really looked back. It was that restart, I think, that really won this race for Chandler Motorsports driver, and CJ Morgan will come off Club Corner. He will see the timing line, and he will take the checkered flag. Maximum points so far, a lights to flag victory for CJ Morgan. Second place, though, goes to Levine Kishore, and that was some really top quality driving between both Levine and Riley Bishop there in their fight for second place. Ultimately, it was Kishore who came out on top with Riley Bishop in third. Fourth place, Charlie Constable, bit of a quiet race for him, but all things considered, that's not a bad thing given some of the shenanigans that we saw going on earlier on in the race, with Jensen Bell in 5th, Nathan Jensen in 6th, and then Lewis Stannard, Harley Connolly, Zach Palmer and James Sherrington completing the top 10. So Sherrington got the better of Jamie Petters. We just saw that. Salvadori was 12th. Gabriel Dorparfait was in almost every position from 4th back to 16th at some point in that race, settling out in the end in 13th ahead of Mostov, who had a pit stop. And two cars that weren't running at the end were Jonathan Moore and Cameron Pratt-Thompson. Pratt-Thompson was in the pit lane pretty much from the end of the first lap, but what happened in the end to Jonathan Moore, I'm not so sure. He had a couple of interesting moments, shall we say, over the course of the 20 minutes and ultimately not running at the flag. Well, big congratulations then to CJ Morgan. He's our first race winner. We'll be hearing from him again in a moment or two, along with, hopefully, our other two podium finishes. But since he's won the race on the track and the race into the broadcast booth, we'll start with our race winner, CJ Morgan. CJ making a habit already of this. A pretty dominant performance, that, although the first 10 minutes in particular didn't look all that easy.
Yeah, to be fair, I didn't expect Riley to put up such a fight, considering the qualifying times. I thought it'd be a two-horse race between me and Levine, but fair play to Riley. He showed what he's got, and he gave it a real fight. And then I managed to just slip past Riley around the outside of the chicane, and then Levine and Riley started fighting, and I managed to get away.
Yeah, it really was that safety car restart that sort of won you the race, I think. You seemed to steal a march on those two, and then Levine was sort of busy battling with Riley. That allowed you to pull further away. So how much practice have you had of things like safety car restarts? Because that really looked like you'd done that before.
I've done 2 safety car restarts in the test round last week, and that's it.
So you're a quick learner, clearly, then, because that was pretty much picture perfect, it has to be said. As relatively straightforward as that race was, I know it probably wasn't as easy as it looked. Race 2 is certainly not going to be easy, coming from the back of the grid. We saw quite a few shenanigans in that race. How nervous are you about getting involved in those?
I'm not nervous. It's all about confidence, and we'll see where the day takes me. So,
excellent stuff. Good attitude there, CJ. Congratulations on the race win, mate.
Thank you, Andy.
CJ Morgan then getting a race victory to kick off the championship. Second place in that race, Levine Kishore, and Levine joins us in the box as well. Levine, congratulations. Again, for you, really, that was a race of 2 halves. You seem to be losing a bit of ground in the first half, but from the safety car restart, you were on it.
Yeah, I mean, the safety car restart was quite funny. It was really fun as well. But Riley put up a great fight, and it really allowed CJ to get on it. But it was fun nonetheless, and a good experience for me as well.
I'm glad to hear you enjoyed that, because we really enjoyed watching the battle too. That was about 2 laps, we think, absolutely side by side. It takes a lot of respect from both of you to be able to do that, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there was a bit of contact, but nothing intentional, I don't think. There was, yeah, I mean, we can both blame each other for just racing incidents, but it was fun nonetheless, battling is battling. And, since the start, pre-season test, I had great pace, but it's slowly dwindled. But I think getting back on it, getting the practice back, and it will be great next race and next week too.
Well, speaking of practice, you had some wheel-to-wheel practice in that race. That will come in handy, I think, for race 2, won't it? Coming from the back of the grid. What's the game plan here?
Game plan is don't make any silly mistakes. Test race proved to be great learning tool last week, because you can't get too greedy in these safety car restarts and also reverse grid races, because if you make one mistake, you're at the back of the pack. So hopefully it goes perfectly from here on out.
That would be good. Levine, congratulations on the podium and best of luck for race 2.
Thank you. Have a good day.
So Levine Kishore then second position. Looks as though we're not going to be able to hear from Riley Bishop, unfortunately, but good to hear from our top 2 drivers in what was a lively opening race of the championship, it must be said. Some good stuff, some not so good stuff, but that's kind of what you expect, really. This is a junior championship, remember. We are dealing with 14 to 17-year-olds, many of whom have never driven, actually, in sim racing before, let alone sat inside a real racing car. And they are learning on the go. And I think, generally speaking, what we saw was a lot to be excited about. Well, what we do now for race 2 is we fully reverse the grid. So the entire running order from race 1 is flipped upside down, and we put our race 1 winner towards the back of the field and those who struggle in race 1 towards the front. Now, the one caveat to that is that the non-finishers from race 1, they still have to come from the back. So it's Alexander Mostav, who was the last car still running, who gets pole position alongside Gabriel Daul-Parfait. Be interested to see what he can do from the front this time. Josh Salvadori and Jamie Petters, the 2 red cars sharing row 2, and we saw Jamie in particular getting his elbows out in that first race. Sherrington then and Zach Palmer together on row number 3. Zach Palmer, one to watch perhaps. I think he's got better pace than his race 1 result would suggest. He will start from the inside of row number 3 alongside Harley Connolly, who was definitely in the wars in that first race, and Lewis Stannard, who despite a pit stop ended up mid-grid come the end of that race, and so therefore he will start roughly where he finished in the opener. And it is the 2 Jensens, Nathan Jensen and Jensen Bell, who share row number 5. So they are completing our top 10, and now we start getting into some of those quick drivers from race 1. Jensen Bell, in fact, was in the top 5 in that first race. So too Charlie Constable, who finished in 4th. He will start 11th for this one. And then our top 3 from race 1, with Riley Bishop 12th, Naveen Kishore in 13th, and CJ Morgan completing the 14, who find themselves fully reversed on the grid. 2 more to come then, Jonathan Moore and Cameron Pratt-Thompson, and they will both be starting from the very tail end of the grid, having not finished race 1. So that's important to remember as well, I think, for the drivers when we start getting into some more of these reverse grid races later on in the season. The importance of finishing that very first race of the day, because if you don't finish it, you will be languishing at the back of the grid again in race number 2, and that is where I suspect some of the trouble may well arise. But the opening lap of this race, I think, set to be even more exciting than the first lap of race number 1, because you inevitably now have some hard chargers coming from the back, drivers at the front who are keen to capitalise upon their moment in the spotlight, shall we say. Some interesting drivers at the front. Alexander Mostav, I don't think we saw the best of in race 1. Gabriel Daul-Parfait gained about 10 positions on the opening couple of corners in the first race. Well, he only has to gain 1 now from the inside of row number 1. Josh Salvadori and Jamie Petters coming from row 2 as well. We're not far away from getting this second race underway. The Silverstone International Circuit will once again come alive to the sights and sounds of the Junior Saloon Car Championship official E-Series. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us here at Silverstone. Do continue to let us know who you think perhaps is worthy of driver of the round. We'll be making that decision before the end of the broadcast tonight as to who gets the free pair of Freem racing gloves, courtesy of our sponsor Freem, and we thank them, of course, for their support in what is an exciting new venture. Here we go then. Grid is set. We've got Alexander Mostav in the white car on pole position. Alongside him, the green and black, is Gabriel Daul-Parfait, watching now for those red lights, which momentarily will illuminate above the starting gantry here on the Silverstone International Circuit. One car just moving around slightly there. That was the third place car of Josh Salvadori. Lights, though, are on. For the second time this season, we are racing in the Junior Saloon Car Championship E-Series. Pretty even start from the front row. One car, I think that's Lewis Stannard, not going anywhere in the middle of the grid. He will drop behind Riley Bishop, who's had a really good start. So Riley Bishop had a good start in race 1, didn't he, as well? Has a bit more work to do in this one. Already starting to gain some positions. Through Abbey they go for the first time. A bit of congestion at the front of the field, and that is Mostav trying to defend from all comers. He's got 2 or 3 cars all trying to find their way past him into the braking zone. It's Sherrington who gets the advantage, but Mostav is very late on the brakes. Back up the inside, clips the curb, does well actually not to bounce into the side of Sherrington, who will carry that momentum around the outside. You saw the time that cost Alexander by hopping over that curb on the inside line, and so it's Sherrington who leads. Salvadori is second, Daul-Parfait in third, and whisper it, I think they all got through the first few corners. We have had one car losing some ground further back, but generally a very clean start. Let's keep that up, everybody, as they head down the hanger straight 3 and 4 wide. I realise that perhaps is not that likely, but let's keep our fingers crossed that they can get through Stoke Order in one piece. 3 wide racing here. Zach Palmer up the inside as they make their way into the right-hander. The Vinnersport car is going to sail on into 5th position, I think, potentially, as they go through that quick right-hander at the end of the straight. One car diving for pit lane already, though, by the looks of it. A little bit of damage or perhaps an early penalty. Oh, that's Salvadori. Now, remember, I thought I saw that car creeping slightly on the grid, and I wonder whether maybe he picked up a start line procedure penalty. One more car going sideways, and around they will go. that was Kishore doing well to avoid the spinning Nathan Jensen. We've also seen issues again for Pratt Thorne, I'm afraid, who, as we saw in the first race, has dropped to the back in the early stages. So Salvador in the pit lane then. Sherrington leads the way, Doyle Parfait second. Mostov in third position, then Jamie Petters is fourth ahead of Zach Palmer, and CJ Morgan sixth already. So our race one winner going great guns here in the early stages, already into the top half dozen, although he's got his, early race sparring partner anyway from race one, Riley Bishop, coming up alongside him already. So those two both making good ground up. As this battle at the front continues to intensify, that's music to the ears of our race one front runners. It gives them a good chance to continue to get closer to the race lead. Levon Kishore there, the one that didn't really gain much ground, and Levine, running in ninth position at the end of the opening lap, so not really going with the two drivers with whom he fought in the opening race. Doyle Parfait then to the lead now, and Sherrington could find himself dropping off the podium if he's not too careful here. Gabriel Doyle Parfait appears out of Stowe as the race leader, but they're 3 wide for second. Jamie Petters, the red car, is on our left. On the right, as we look at it, is Mostov, I think. And that will be Jamie Sherrington, therefore, in the middle. They turn through the left-right at the start of the club complex. On board with James Sherrington. He fights his way back through into second, but I suspect there is a car up our inside. There were 2 cars at the inside, and Zach Palmer was one of them. Not entirely sure where Zach came from, but he hops over the curbs too, and that will kill his momentum out onto the pit straight. Through will go CJ Morgan. Riley Bishop looking up the inside as well. This is very good racing, though, actually. Not a lot of body contact that I'm seeing, which is good news. And especially given the speed differences that we saw from some of the drivers through that sequence of corners, they did well to keep that clean. Already turning into one of those races where you've got to remember to catch your breath and take stock of the situation. 16.5 minutes to go. Gabriel Doyle Parfait looking in his mirrors with a Cheshire cat grin on his face, I would imagine, because he can see all of this kicking off behind. And, well, I was going to say that's giving him a bit of an advantage, but it's not really, is it? He didn't have a great run through the first part of the lap. All of a sudden, Petters and Sherrington are right back on his tail. So the green car moves to the right-hand side of the road to defend the race lead. The Crocodile weaving around in the slipstream behind him. Petters to his outside. And this is CJ Morgan leading a train up the inside. They're all going to arrive at Stowe Corner together. Bit of a hip and shoulder into the braking zone. Jamie Petters trying to go through. CJ Morgan up the inside of everybody. Will break through into second. And that might now become the race lead because Petters is way, way wide. And just about manages to bounce back on the road in front of our race one winner, who is looking for the maximum points haul if he can get it here from Silverstone. A few cars between himself and Riley Bishop, who perhaps he saw as his big rival in this race. Now there's only one more car standing between CJ Morgan and the race lead once again. Brilliant racing this as they come out of club corner. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them all together. Full file at the very front of the field, but 3 wide further back as Riley Bishop goes up the inside of James Sherrington, who in turn is trying to get up the inside of Zach Palmer, I think, into Abbey. Someone had to back out of that. I suspect that it was Sherrington because Bishop has gone through into 5th position. 2 did make a bit of contact just on the apex there, I think, but nothing too significant. James Sherrington does slot in behind, gets into the rear bumper slightly of Riley's car. Turquoise Machine hangs on though. Continue on their way down the hill. CJ Morgan up the inside of Jamie Petters, and the race 1 winner is now the race 2 leader, and that has been a really, really top job. 5.25 minutes it took him to get to the front of the field, and CJ Morgan now will look to try and check out before some of the other podium runners from race 1 get up there with him. Gabriel Doyle Parfait has broken back through into 2nd place as well, so Jamie Petters dropping down to 3rd as a result of that. On board with Zach Palmer, who gets really sideways into Stowe, and that opens the door for Riley Bishop. Well, it opened it a fraction, and Riley forced it fully open, shall we say, on the apex, but Zach was definitely having a moment already. In fairness to Riley, he backs out of that so as not to gain an advantage. Petters back up the inside of Doyle Parfait ahead of us. They lean on each other, and, Jamie Petters has not yet given up on trying to go back after the race lead, I suspect. Of club again, Zach Palmer gaining on them as a result of that, but he's still trying to fend off Riley Bishop, who is somewhere to his right-hand side. As they come back along the start-finish line, there is Riley at the line. That might become 4th place at turn number 1 through Abbey Corner, and Riley Bishop, who is capable of some really good side-by-side racing in race 1, is engaging in more of it here in the early stages of our 2nd race. Back in behind for now though, so temporarily they are single file. CJ Morgan the leader, Jamie Petters 2nd, Gabriel Doyle Parfait in 3rd. Ahead of Zach Palmer, Riley Bishop, James Sherrington. Then it is Levine Kishore. Levine, again, not necessarily getting off to the fastest of starts in the race, but is not out of this by any stretch. The black and pink car running in 7th place, a little detached perhaps from the leading 6. As they continue to battle, I'm sure Levine will get closer. Right now, though, he's trying to defend from Charlie Constable. He was 4th in that opening race, I seem to recall, so Charlie also moving through the pack quite nicely. We'll be loving seeing all of this jostling for position going on ahead of him. Steering lock it requires to get these cars through Stowe Corner, and Levine Kishore perhaps not using quite enough of that because he runs out wide, and Charlie Constable sees the opportunity to pull to the outside line into Vale. Did that work? No, not really, because Levine is still there. The ahead of them, meanwhile, they're 3 and 4 wide. Gabriel Doyle Parfait trying to defend his 2nd place, but he hasn't been able to. Jamie Pettis has gone through already, so actually he's trying to defend 3rd from Zach Palmer, James Sherrington and CJ Morgan. And Riley Bishop, I should say. CJ Morgan, of course, leading the race by a second or so. Jamie Pettis doing his best to go after him. Bishop out wide through Abbey. Will That's back on the road behind. So there's Morgan. The red car Pettis very much going with him. Missed the fight for 3rd position as they turn through Village again. 12 minutes to go. Look at that behind. That was Salvador, I think, wasn't it? Up the inside of Levine Kishore, who is doing his best to prove me wrong here. I really thought Levine was going to come on strong and challenge for a podium in this race, but he's slipping backwards now. He gets back ahead of Josh as they turn out onto the Hanger Straight again. We're taking some very interesting lines through Village. Salvador now looking up the inside. Meanwhile, you're riding on board with Harry Connolly. Watches Charlie Constable go to the outside. So those 3 are going to go 3 wide up into Stowe. Someone will have to back out of that one, you suspect. It's not Levine Kishore, though, who gets back ahead of Josh Salvadori. And down the hill towards the braking zone at Vale Corner again. And Harley Connolly really enjoying the view, but would very much like to get involved in this. Now, that is Gabriel Doyle Parfait, the green car. How did he end up there? Something's happened to the driver who was on the podium. Something definitely happening to him now as he's playing skittles with Salvadori and Constable. And I think actually Constable coming out of that the worst. No, Salvadori, the other red car, dropping to the back of that little group now. They've been caught by the next 2, which is Harley Connolly, Jonathan Moore. Alexander Mostav's not that far back either. On board with Jonathan Moore now as he turns through farm. We're still not even quite halfway through this race, would you believe? Running through the right-hander at Village, and that is Connolly rejoining, and that was anything but a safe rejoin. And unfortunately, sorry, not Connolly, that was Moore, I think, wasn't it, getting into Charlie Constable. It was Harley Connolly. There are 2 yellow and black cars in that group, and it was bound to confuse me, so it was Harley who ran wide, I think, and rejoined into Charlie Constable, who really had nowhere to go. So Charlie will feel a little aggrieved at that. Meanwhile, Riley Bishop trying to get to the outside line of Zach Palmer here. This is for 3rd position. Will hang on, but of course Riley with the wide-in, tight outline will carry the speed down the hill. That only gives him the outside line for Vale. Now, you can go around the outside at the left-hander at Vale. Get the inside for the right, but not if the car to your inside does that. Well, somehow Riley hangs tough around the outside. Zach Palmer was all 4 wheels in the air there as he hit the curb, and Levine Kishore is going for a gap that he's always going to close up the middle. There's an inevitable squeeze, and Levine did well to back out of that, actually, just in the nick of time. Sherrington and Palmer were always going to close the door from either side. Ends up with Sherrington back into 4th, and Zach Palmer lucky to still be pointing the right way, I think, in 5th, really, for a couple of big moments going through the club complex. Levine Kishore also joining in now, looking up the inside there, and will try to relieve Zach Palmer of 5th place. And Zach getting sideways on the exit of Village will help. And Levine Kishore on the inside line now into Village, I think should be able to slip through here. The Vinner Sport car of Zach Palmer hanging tough on the outside, eventually gets run out of road, so will lose the position. Jonathan Moore's race looks like it might be done. He's stationary going through the link. Stannard has also never really recovered from time lost earlier on, and sadly it's going to be a double non-finish, it seems, for he didn't finish race 1 at Thorns. Zach Palmer in the pit lane now. Oh, and Sherrington. What was that all about? So we've missed something there with 2 of our front runners. So it looks as though, unfortunately, we have had server issue. That is a shame. So we saw a couple of cars suddenly getting sent back to the pit lane, and there has clearly been an issue with the server, and that is such a shame, because that was a much better race than race 1, actually. You could always guarantee more excitement from the reverse grid race, but we were seeing some really good driving standards in that. A few bits of contact inevitably, but much better all round than we had in race 1. And that is a big shame that the server has rather let us down. So we will of course work to try and figure out what goes on here. We were just past half race distance, I think, weren't we? So there is a potential that the race could be called and points awarded, but more news on that as and when we get it. This, unfortunately, is the very nature of sim racing. We're reliant on these servers that people are accessing from all over the place. Unfortunately, we have suffered an issue here in race number 2, which I think has now, I believe I'm hearing, been called. But I think we do have a race result, so because it had gone past half race distance, I suspect that this will be the final result. But again, more news on that as and when I get it confirmed to me. We perhaps in a moment or two can have a look at the way the cars were running at the time. It was CJ Morgan who, of course, had managed to come from the very back to the very front, which was seriously impressive. Jamie Pettis in second, Riley Bishop back on the podium in third, ahead of James Sherrington and Zach Palmer, with Levine Kishore, Josh Salvadori, Gabriel Doyle Parfait in 8th. He was a big loser in all of that, really. Something had happened to him just before the server crashed and dropped him well out of podium contention. Jonathan Moore was 9th, ahead of Alexander Mostav, who also lost some ground in the early stages, having started on the front of the grid. So there were your top 10. Then it was Harley Connolly and Jensen Bell with Nathan Jensen. Those two started the race together and finished it together, but unfortunately a lot further down the order than they should have been. Charlie Constable was 14th, Lewis Stannard in the pit lane at the time of the end of the race. So too Cameron Pratt-Thompson, who was an early retirement from both of this evening's races. So once again, apologies for the technical hitch here. And the drivers, I think, just being informed of exactly what's going on. We're waiting for official confirmation that that is the race done and dusted, but I suspect that that will be the case. As I said, we've got past 50% race distance, but if it is the case, CJ Morgan, whilst he'll be a bit disappointed, I think, that that's how it was resolved, he'll be more than happy to take away double race victory. I think he had the fastest lap in that second race as well, but don't quote me on that. We'll wait for confirmation of that. But the 2 race victories certainly going his way. That was 50 points plus a bonus for the pole position in race 1. So he's well on his way to a very solid points haul, is CJ Morgan. He will be hoping that he can continue this on into the rest of the season. We head to Donington Park, the national circuit at Donington Park, in a week's time for the second round of the championship. CJ Morgan, who is a Junior Saloon Car Championship racer in real life, will be hoping to gather some more experience in the eSeries in a week's time that he can perhaps take into his real life racing this season. DJ says that he plans to stay in tin top racing, but looking to a move perhaps into GT racing or touring cars in the future. I mean, show me a young racing driver in the UK who wouldn't like to do that, but CJ already showing us he's perhaps got the ability to be able to do that. It's the more tight and technical circuits too, so if he's this strong at Silverstone, which is certainly not a tight technical circuit, then you can imagine he's only going to get better when we move into that middle part of the season where we start racing places like Brands Hatch on the Indy circuit. Definition of tight and technical, really. Croft as well, Alton Park, Snetterton 300 circuit on the calendar, and then it all ends at a circuit a lot more similar to this one, really, the Thruxton circuit on the 6th of April, a brilliant place for a championship to be rounded up. So the high-speed Thruxton, there you can see confirmation of that calendar, will play host to our championship decider. In a week's time we go to Donington Park, the national circuit, 2nd of March, so be sure to tune in again for the next round of the championship. We head to Brands Hatch, Croft, Alton Park, Snetterton and Thruxton. We are getting confirmation now that that second race has been called, so sadly that red flag brought about by the server issues has meant that the second race is not going to go any further, but we've got past half race distance, so I'm anticipating that we will end up with full points scored, but we will wait and see exactly what the decision is. Be sure to head over to the website and social media pages for links to the race results and also any other news on the championship as we move on through the 7-week championship. Be sure to give us a like and a follow as well, and show your support for this exciting new championship. And as I said, we will have all of the official confirmation of what's going on with regards to race results over there, hopefully the very near future. One thing I'm just hanging on for is I don't know whether we're going to be able to chat to our podium finishers again from that race, or whether or not with the race sort of being called and we don't know whether it's full points or not. We're sort of trying to figure that out as we go. And we are hearing, yes, there will be no post-race interviews for this one. As I said, just because we're not entirely sure whether that race result is going to stand or not. So an unfortunate end to the night, but certainly enjoyed the racing that we had up until that point. And we thank you all for joining us here at Silverstone. As I said, be sure to head over to the social media pages for all of the information on future rounds of the championship and the official confirmation of the results from tonight's round. And a big thank you to everyone who's worked so hard to get this championship going. Mick Sutton, the series organiser, Scott Thorne, our race director, and of course to Tom O'Farrell, who's been busy pressing buttons in the background to bring us this top quality broadcast. We will all be back again in a week's time on the 2nd of March for the second event of the season. We hope you'll join us too.